Welcome to the Fire Time Podcast, where it's never hot enough, slow is fast, and the way to win is to make it so stupidly easy to buy from you that there's no excuse not to. I'm your host, Tim Reed. And as always, I'm so excited to be here today. Thank you for listening to the Fire Time Podcast. Now, this is going to be the second to last episode of Season 2. And I know I've mentioned this before, but I am just floored as I think back to all the guests that we've had and just the amazing amount of content that we've been able to go through and cover over this last season. Now, today's episode is not going to let you down. I am so excited for you to meet our guest, Cory Dupuy. He's a good friend of mine. He's a co-worker, and he is someone that you need to be paying attention to. What we're going to cover in this episode has a lot to do with high-end sales. Cory's someone who operates in the builder world, and while I know that a lot of the focus of this show has been on the retail aspect, Cory is one of the best around when it comes to understanding how to sell to builders, and in particular, high-end custom builders. And what it really comes down to is being a friend. I think what you're going to hear in this episode is the heart behind Cory. When you listen to him talk, you understand that his customers just like him. They want to do business with him. Not afraid to tell it like it is, and he also understands his value that he brings to the table, which just gives him immense power when he's going after these high-end builders. But before we get into the conversation, one thing I want you to listen for is when Cory talks about finding your customer. That's something that he has done over and over and over, and he's created a niche for himself that has just been amazing and is paying off really, really well for him. We'll circle back at the end to talk about this, but what I want you to understand is that Cory's a good friend of mine. And we have conversations like this all the time on the phone. And I felt really blessed by having him speak into my life and just understanding his processes for the way that he thinks and goes about his day. So I didn't do much editing to this conversation. I purposely wanted it to be very conversational to kind of pull back the curtain onto these discussions that me and Cory are having. And I think you're going to get a ton out of it. Like I said, I can't wait for you to hear this conversation. We'll circle back at the end and there's a few things that I want to talk about. Joining me from Seattle, Washington is one of my good friends and one of the best salespeople I've ever met. He happens to be a Firespace Engineer at Fireside Home Solutions. I'm joined by Cory Dupuy. What's up, man? How you doing?
Great. Thanks so much. That is an awesome introduction. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, true story. Your business card actually says Firespace Engineer. Isn't that right?
It does. It absolutely does.
How'd you come up with that?
A lot. Well, it actually, my first thing was Cory Dupuy, salesperson to the stars. And I ran with that for a couple of years, and it was funny and it was great, except for whenever a job went sideways, I would get a lot of crap from people about it. So I decided to mess with it. And everybody's always asking you to engineer the price of the fireplace. And when I start looking at the fireplace, there's a lot of people that sell just the fireplace. But to get into some of the higher, more custom fireplaces, you want to look at the whole area. So I started calling that the fire space. Because I'm trying to always pull people out, talk about their finishes or a TV or a piece of art, something that gives me something to solve. That's as you're starting to ask questions, you want them to solve a problem. So Firespace Engineer kind of came out of that.
That's awesome. Well, so for people that don't know you, Cory, you're up in the Seattle area and you sell mostly to like the builder world and stuff like that, but you're selling the high end fireplaces. I don't know if anybody else that sells high end on the volume that you do. I mean, that's your bread and butter, right?
Yeah, I was kind of forced into it. I've been with Fireside up here, who's the number one dealer in the area, but I've worked for all the other companies around. And so when I came to Fireside, my history was with a company called Masco. I started as an installer, and then I was a production manager at Masco. And they were really focused on the builder category, the kind of builder box stuff, the volume. That was their bread and butter. So I come to Fireside, and that's my history. I'm like, I know how to install, but my history is you go out there and you get a builder that's building 30 to 300 houses, and you get like 5 or 6 of those in your stable, and you're going to just make some money. Then I come to Fireside, and those stables are all full.
Sure.
There is nobody out there that's building that much that isn't already there. So I had to quickly figure out, well, how am I going to make a living? And that was the place that was just starting. Again, it's about 5 years ago. That kind of custom category was just really starting. So I went for it, and because I had the install background, then I could talk about that piece of it as well, and off we went. I got kind of fortunate that right before I came to Fireside, I met a gentleman that was the head of Ortal Fireplaces.
Okay.
And I fell in love with this brand. And now it's kind of expanded to a type of fireplace, not a brand of fireplace,
Sure.
but frameless linear that's still a direct vent. It just got exciting. So funny story how I found him. It was Saturday. I was watching Saturday Night Live one night about 7-8 years ago, having an adult beverage late at night on House, and because I'm a fireplace geek, I look at House at fireplaces and designs, and that's what I do. So I started looking, and I came across this fireplace that had wood all the way down to the glass. It was overframed, like just breaking all these rules. And my immediate reaction was, this is the problem with House. Everyone puts these pictures that aren't legal. Like, you can't do this. So I started searching around trying to figure out what brand this was, and and I found out that what they were doing was legal. And so I just kept calling, and finally I got a hold of Andy Todd.
Oh yeah.
And I had been talking to Andy about buying SkyTech remotes, and all of a sudden I find out he's also the rep for this brand of fireplace that is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And so I call him this day, and he literally answers the phone, "Cory, I don't have your answer about remotes anymore." And tweet me if you want, but this is exactly what I said to him. I said, "Andy, I could give a shit about your stupid remotes. Why didn't you call me when you had the coolest fireplace ever? Like, what is wrong with you?" So we quickly, started going down that road, and Gil came out, and I, again, coming from this other background, I've got the director of Ortal coming out, and I just want to wow him with all my ideas. And we didn't have a showroom or anything, so I had just started building this little travel trailer. It was, just like a little horse trailer style. I actually put garage doors in the sides that would open up, so they were, operable doors. And when you opened them, they had fireplace on the side.
Yeah.
And so I started explaining to Gil, how I was going to put one of his Ortals in this trailer and drive it around, Seattle area, just sell them. And he looked at me and said, "That's not going to work." And I was like, "What do you mean that's not going to work?" He goes, "If you want to sell this product, you got to go find the customer that wants this product. You don't need the product. You just need the customer." And it, of course, it took me until he left to really sink in and hear what he was saying. And it worked. And I just realized that is it. You go treat those customers good. A builder box customer has a friend that will purchase another builder box. So my theory is, if you go find a high-end custom customer, they'll have a friend that also wants to buy that. So you just try to run in those circles that you want to sell in, and get your ins through there. And that's kind of what I did.
Dude, that is so awesome. So I want to circle back here and give a little bit of context to our relationship, because we probably met, it was probably only 3-4 years ago, and we met in Mexico on an HHT rewards trip. And I want to hear that you tell this story, but all I know is that our mutual friend Chelsea heard you asking questions about, "Hey, is this Tim guy all right? Like, what's he like?"
Yeah. So we worked for the same company, but just in different states, you and I. You worked on the retail side, and I was on the builder sales side. And I even forget what the when we first met or when I first started hearing, but I just don't hear that passion that I have very often. And so I kept hearing about you and seeing some of your emails and just, what you would put out there. And Chelsea is a builder sales rep from the Portland market, and her and I had become really close because we were both hired by Fireside at the same time. And so we've come from other companies. We both had, fireplace backgrounds, but we've come to the Fireside family and trying to figure out, how to make that work. So she became a good friend of mine. And that's why I was asking her about you, just trying to figure out, like, where does this personality come from? Rock star, retail sales guy, or stove installer. It's like, you're just so deep.
Well, we did connect over rock and roll. I remember that we had a great time on that Mexico trip. And I remember that you couldn't believe I had a rock and roll history. And I remember, I think I mentioned like, oh yeah, like here's my band and it's on Spotify. And I didn't think much of it. And you went back that night to your hotel room and you were listening to our songs on Spotify. And the next day you were like, dude, this is an awesome song. And honestly, that meant a lot that like you were actually into the, art and interest that I had.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing. I mean, this is where sales really starts, is like you can think of, a lot of people think of, this is my career as sales, but what sales really is just getting to know people.
Yeah.
You're just connecting one thing with another. And as you were explaining it to me and telling me about, the truth is we were at a bar and you're like, yeah, I got this band. And I'm like, yeah, we all have a band when we're at a bar. So part of me going home was just like checking your facts, and I realized how right on you were about it. So it's great.
Yeah, that's hilarious. Well, dude, so I'm really excited to talk to you. I feel like you have been somebody that I've really looked to as having the same kind of passion and fire that I felt, but applied to something differently. For me, my focus has been on retail, where for you, it's on the builder market, high-end custom, and everything like that. But at the heart of Cory Dupuy, what I absolutely love is how likable you are. Like, you are a friend to everybody. And I want to hear you just talk about, has that come naturally, and why is that so important with sales? I feel like I'm going to over-exaggerate this question because I really want to get to the heart of it. But so often, people can default to kind of being a friend when they have to, but then getting really stiff and uptight about things. I feel like you are always happy, laughing, having a good time, and just wanting to be friends with your customer.
Well, that is great to hear. I don't know if I guess everyone says it came natural. I don't know. I think that it's a lot of self-work. I think the flip side of everybody liking me is the fact that the reason why you feel that way is because I feel like I need everybody to like me. And I hate that. I see other people where, they can look at someone and be like, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
Well, I just feel that, drive to make sure that everybody likes me, which is, sometimes a little too much of a burden to carry. I mean, we were just talking about this yesterday, you and I, where the idea that it's no, a customer sales relationship is no different than any relationship. Is sometimes there's just not a match. And if you can focus on selling your matches and redirecting the ones because there's times that from the get-go, this isn't going to be a match.
Oh, yeah.
That person needs my bid in 1 hour, and I can't turn stuff around that fast. So just having the confidence to pass that on to another salesperson that you're working with, or just be honest with it and say, I just don't think that we're not going to work out together.
Have you had to do that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. What's that look like?
Unfortunately. Often it starts with anger. Like before I'm ever talking to someone, like on the inside, I'm like, oh, that person's pushing back and rah, rah. I'll say a real time story. So last night I get a call I have one national account that I work with. And this is actually, we're going to go away from Firespace. It's a garage door thing. But I get a call last night, 4:00 on a Friday, and it says, I want to, Cory, your bid on your garage doors is $1,000 higher. And on this new plat that was started, and they're calling me to say, your last plat, we want credit. We can't believe that you're charging us $1,000 per house more than this other builder is, or this other garage door company. So I immediately, my immediate reaction is to get off the phone so I can collect myself. Because when I'm scrambling, I'm not saying the right thing. So I got off the phone and I started, going back to my own bids, going to see, does it make sense? Is my number right? How could this be off so much? I'm never beat by $1,000, calling some other sales friends that are, that can help me just dissect it and stuff. And by the end of it, I called them back and said, that's a good number. Now, if you're asking me if I'm $100 higher, like I could see myself being $100 higher.
Yeah.
But $1,000 higher ended up being about 20% higher. That's quite a bit. So at that point, I was able to call him back and bring some comedy and some laughter into it, but say, I'm telling you that they messed up on the number. I am confident in mine. In my number, there's something wrong with theirs. There has to be. I know the market well enough. We as Fireside are doing, enough of the nationals to know that if I was $1,000 high on this person, then I would be high on those 4 other people as well.
Yeah.
So then it's just honesty, just being able to. Tim Rethlick talks about a friction point, and sometimes a friction point helps you get the price. Sometimes it's a conversation like this, and you just tell them, that's the number. I know, I'm confident in that number.
Yeah, that's tough. And I feel like this, I want to talk about this. It's funny, going into this conversation, I purposely didn't plan any questions because I just wanted it to be just like our phone conversations that we have. Yeah. But I feel like one thing that I've recognized about you is that you are a truth teller. And I say that really specifically because I know for me, like, you are not afraid to give me very honest feedback that can sometimes be critical. And that's something that I really appreciate. And I've seen you in big rooms full of lots of personalities and high-ranking people. As people are kind of tiptoeing around the issue, you are not afraid to step up and cut through it and speak the truth. And that's something that I've really respected about you, and I would imagine it's just hard for a lot of people to do.
Yeah, it comes down to you. Like, there's people that don't regularly have, get the truth told to them, need to look at why. Mm-hmm. There's enough people that want to share truths with you. Everybody has a few people that are really close to them, right? But if you're not getting that on the regular, the people that are closest to you don't realize that that's safe. So that's just, I've always known you to be so open. Like, I honestly feel if I thought that I should convince you that you should never wear a black shirt anymore, you would listen to me. Like, you would listen. You might not agree, but you would really listen. I know that you're that open. And so the more people are open with stuff, the more people feel safe to tell the truth.
Wow. Dude, that's awesome. Thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's funny. I've been thinking about this a lot, and I always thought of it as like guardrails, or the bumpers in the gutters, but you talk about it as lines on the court.
Yeah.
And in those situations, that's what I feel like. What happens is we all start tiptoeing around this line on the court.
Yep.
We want to put the half court line in. Nobody just comes out and says, "Hey, we need to put a half court line in here so that these people can't do this." Everyone starts just tiptoeing around it. And I like to get it out there and say, let's flush it out. Let's figure out what we're really talking about. And because somebody wants to just say, we need to put a half court line in. And everybody's talking around. But if we know what somebody's real agenda is, then we can talk about that specifically instead of having things always be in this gray area. I feel like I know what people are trying to get at, so let's just talk about that.
Yeah.
Let's just get it out there.
Well, I think that's helped a ton of people, and I would imagine in your conversations with builders and stuff, it's honestly like having the shameless audacity to just step up and say what's going on. I imagine that has helped you probably more than it's hurt you, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. It's helped me way more than it's hurt me. It's a blessing and a curse at the same time because it's hard. Sometimes people don't like to hear that.
Yeah.
Some people don't like to hear you dig straight into the meat of it, and that's hard.
Yeah. So I want to turn the tables to you. So we've talked about you coming on the podcast a lot, and you've said that there's some things that you have wanted to talk to me about.
Yeah, I think the first one that, and you've started these last few episodes, you actually started to kind of talk about it a little bit more, but when the first one that I think came to mind through season 1 was you're always saying, let's make it so stupidly simple.
Yeah.
Like, what does that mean? Because you can make something simple from every different angle. It's, I guess, less of a question now, but that was a big one for me is trying to understand from you, what does simple look like?
Yeah.
And how did you come up with it? I
think the key with simplicity is, can we make our buying process simple to where there's no barriers? So when the customer looks at all the options equally, they look at everybody else and say, well, we could buy from them, but that's going to be a pain because I know that this is going to come up. We could buy from them, but oh man, this is going to be a pain. It's going to be you know what? These people, they were so easy. They've showed us the steps to take. It's going to be simple. It's a no-brainer. We got to buy from there. So I think that it probably has to do with buying process more than anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. And that's where, when you were first talking about, I was thinking of it more like systems, not process. I see a difference between a system and a process.
Yep. Can you define that real quick?
A system is it's more of like mechanical.
Yep.
A process to me is like my process, which can also be like in my head or more of an emotional process or more of a, steps 1 through,
Yeah.
A to B.
Yeah.
I think I see it as those are the two differences. And so because I hear you talk and then I think about the way I do things and I, try to make things match up and see where I can make tweaks and whatnot. But for me, the simple part is my number one goal as I'm meeting with somebody, whether it's over phone, email, or most often in the showroom, is really the simple is make sure that they trust that I understand their goal. That's as simple as it can get, because what they're looking for what I want to be is the project manager for their Firespace.
Yeah.
I was, this goes back to when I first got into sales about 7-8 years ago. One of the builders that I had installed for and scheduled for years knew that company that I had worked for got out of Fireplace and then I had kind of spun off and was working for someone else. And his fireplace at his own home wasn't working. He asked if I could come over and fix it. And so I came over there and it was like, one of those so simple, loose wire, just, 20 seconds and it's fixed. But it's 6:00 at night. I'm in this dude's home and this is a great opportunity for me. So I didn't fix it right away. I took the glass off, cleaned the glass, just started stretching it out and just started talking with him. And I asked him, his name's Steel Granger. It comes from a family of builders up here that I absolutely adore.
Yeah.
And so I asked him, I said, Steel, how does it work with your designers? Like you use this designer. How does that work? Do you send them a set of plans, before you start building every house and have them give you a bid on their design for this house? Or he goes, no, I just send it to her and tell her what the budget is and she comes up with the design. And I was like, perfect, Steel, I want to be your fireplace designer. And he started laughing. But from that moment on, I was like, yeah, that's it. This designer has this title that is just trusted to the end. I can do that. I want to do that for you. And that's really kind of where it all began for me, is recognizing that there are people out there that are just trusted as the best in their field, from design through install.
Yeah.
And if I can get into that builder's, psyche that I'm that person for him, then my job just got that much easier, but most importantly, that much more fun.
Yeah.
Because the hardest part is the negotiation. That can be fun, but it is the hardest part because, every bit is, a few percent one way or another can move. And so, but if you can get them just to trust you out the gate, and then they start recognizing that they're not paying for just the fireplace, it's the entire service.
Yeah.
It's the whole, the whole package. And that's what I try to do.
Well, and you said, before we started recording here, you said something that was just awesome, where you said your favorite question to ask when people come into the showroom and you meet them.
Oh, yeah. Describe what this is going to look like when we're done.
Yeah. Describe what this is going to look like when we're done. That is awesome.
Yeah.
How did you even come up with that? Because, that brings you into such a bigger picture than just the fireplace.
So, as I've gotten to the point where I feel like I'm in a career, a sales career and stuff, I started looking back and figuring out like how I did. I don't have a college degree. I got a job as an insulator in construction for the first time out of necessity. I had a child on the way and I had to get a job.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like I, grew up wanting to be a fireplace guy. I just grew up, and here I was. So I started to look back and I realized that sales is storytelling, which also falls in line with what you've been talking about.
Yeah.
So I started remembering like some of my fondest memories as a child was my grandma and grandpa used to tell me stories. Like I've heard my grandparents tell me the same stories, 100 times. And they tweak a little bit here or there. And I was always on the edge of my seat. And so that I think is where, that's where I really tapped into it, is just when you can get to that emotional place and you're invested emotionally, whether it's, and not just happiness, just any emotion, it's easier to buy, it's easier to connect, it's easier to sell, all of those things. So when I ask that question, and if I ask of you and you start describing it, I'm listening for, as TR would say, the friction points. I'm looking for the things that I can solve. In the storybook story brand way. I'm looking for the problems.
Yeah.
Like, where's the big bad guys that I'm going to help you defeat?
Yeah.
That's the thing. So as you start describing it, then all of a sudden, and what we talked about earlier is, 10% of the people will start describing very technical things. And in fact, I got to spin off to this story. So it's a frameless linear high-end fireplace sale, and I met with the lady, and she was the lady of the house, and she loves the fireplace. She loves everything, but she wanted her husband to come back. So he came back by, and this particular brand has cool wall technology and all that. So I was basically just going down the same road as I had gone down with her a couple of weeks prior, hitting on all the same emotional stuff. And he is just like staring out into space, not really paying attention, just wandering around.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what am I doing wrong here? And then all of a sudden she says, explain to him about the cool wall. So then same thing I always do. I hear you talk about nobody really wants to hear about BTUs and all of this stuff.
Yeah.
Right. So I try not to, get too far down that. So I've started telling people, like, listen, I'm a fireplace nerd. You gotta understand, I got 20 years in this one industry. I'm only one of the top at one thing in my life. It's this industry. So I really dig into it. So I always tell the customer, I go, stop me if I start boring you. This is where I kind of geek out on fireplaces. It happens all the time. And so I started talking to him about it. And he all of a sudden, he started engaging, started explaining to him how where these fireplaces were invented in Israel. The reason they were built like this is because they, it's all concrete construction. We wanted big linears and smaller, tighter spaces. So we go down this road, and he's totally engaged. They're buying. It's all done. So I told him I'd go out and meet with their contractor and do a site visit in the following week just to make sure everything we talked about in the showroom will work on site.
Yeah.
So I go out there and I meet the contractor, and he asked me if I knew who the husband was. And I was like, no, who is he? He goes, he's probably one of the smartest men you've ever met. And I was like, what? He goes, yeah. So this guy goes to college and gets a math degree. And then he gets his master's in this type of math that nobody uses anymore. He just wanted to try it. It's like the Greek of math. He just wanted to try it. So he gets his master's, and he gets a call from NASA. They want him to come interview for this new project. This is back in the early 80s, I guess.
Yeah.
So he goes out there and he interviews with them, and interview's going great. And they say to him, oh, what we're really looking for is somebody that knows this type of math. And he goes, oh, I got a master's in that. I learned under so-and-so. And they're like, you're hired. Can you start tomorrow? So that was the Hubble telescope program.
No way.
Yeah. This math is the type of math that deals with rocket propulsion. And it's the best math to use. This is how much I know about it.
It's the best math.
Yeah. So he worked on the Hubble telescope, and now he's part of Amazon's drone program. And when it was done, I was like, oh my gosh, I am so glad that I listened. Because if I would have stuck to the emotional piece of how great it was going to look, that guy didn't care about any of that.
Well, that goes back to just knowing your customer.
Yeah.
I mean,
absolutely.
you spent a ton of time with him, and after asking the right questions, you figured out that this is, he had a different set of problems than his wife had.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. And so we got to solve both of them because they are hiring us, they are hiring us to be their guide through the process. So
yeah.
One of my other things I love to tell people is that, my goal here is when you're done, like this project, whether it's a remodel or a full new construction, this is going to be a project and you're going to go through a lot of stress. So my goal is when it's all done and you're having your adult beverage in front of this fireplace, I want you to remember back and be thankful that you found me. Like that is my goal. I really want people that, to want to circle back. Anytime I get an invite to an open house, or I just went out and fixed the fireplace on Friday, just was in the area, a fireplace we installed a couple of years ago, and it's having an intermittent issue. And so I went over there and tried to fix it myself, and we got it going. And another neighbor came over, and they started talking. So this weekend they're going to have a big party. And because I was in there, and the homeowner was like, you know what, Cory, you should come too. You should come too. And it's like, those are such great feelings. Like especially at the end of the project, it's kind of like getting a good Yelp review or something.
Yeah.
The ultimate amount of appreciation, like it was all worth it.
Yep.
None of us only work for money.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Wow. So here's where I want to go next. I want to ask you about this because I feel like we've kind of talked about it, but I want to see where this goes. The title of this episode is People Buy from People They Like. Mm-hmm. And I want to just riff on that for a little while, because I feel like there are so many unlikable salespeople. And I think that the niche you found, I mean, you frankly sell 3 to 4 times as much as many of the businesses in our industry by yourself. And I think that the way you've built that is not by, I mean, not that you don't know fireplaces, but I don't think it's by knowing every single answer and every single detail, even though you're great at a lot of that. I think it's because people like you, just straight up.
Yeah, you can't sell it. You can't sell big numbers and to know everything. You almost have to turn those things off, because if you know everything, then everybody's going to want you to answer every question. And it's really hard. Trust is a big part, and it's taken me many years to get to the point. I remember John Waterstrat and I was in his office, it's about 3 years ago, in tears. Like, this is the truth. I was in his office in tears because I was fighting with people on my own team. I had builders mad at me. I had I wasn't happy, like, just emotionally I wasn't happy. And I just remember being in his office, and actually his partner is no longer with us, had flown up from Portland just for this meeting because I was a wreck. And,
I remember that. I remember when he flew up.
Yeah, it was really tough because I felt like I was being pulled in so many different directions. I couldn't be everything to everyone. And John looked at me and he said, "You have to take the tools out of your car." He literally sent me home that night and said, "When you get home, I want a picture of you taking that toolbox out of your car. You have to trust us. You have to trust our service team. You have to trust our production team. You have to trust our purchasing team. You have to trust all those people." And it was really hard because when you start trusting people, you open yourself up and you're more vulnerable. And that is a tough thing for me. When you can do it all, you want to protect yourself and do it all. But when you're also being asked to grow your sales, how can you do it? Like that, you just figure out the math. If you want to grow 20% more than you were last year, where is it going to come from? Are you going to, you can work 20% more. That's an option. But you have to figure it out. Like, where does the time, because the time is the biggest commodity that we can't change. Yeah. So I took the tools out, and now I carry like a 5-in-1. So I have one. I got a screwdriver that'll help me do almost anything. But
I keep like that in a tape measure with me.
Exactly. So I consciously, I kept telling them I want to be that person. That's one of the reasons some of them buy from me, is because they know they can call me and I can go fix it. So what I decided to do was I'm just going to ratchet down the technical level of what I can fix. Not everybody knows that I can fix it all. So you just stop fixing some of the stuff. And so I'll go out to, anytime someone needs me to run by a job and see if you can do that, I'll always do that, especially if they're going to be there. Offer to bring them tacos. That's my new. I love to bring people tacos. Stop at the taco truck, bring it there. If you put a plate of food in front of someone, they're going to start eating them. Then you guys are going to laugh. And that goes back to the people you like. Like, have that kind of fun with people, have fun. That's the number one. Have fun doing it. And when you find a place in your job that isn't fun, you go back to systems and processes. Like, why isn't this fun? We all want to have fun. It's bred into us. It's in our genes. We want to have fun. So figure out in those sticky points why it's not happening, get buy-in from all the different angles, and change it.
Yeah, well, and I feel like one of the testaments to you having people that like you, and even like with your customers, I remember a while back you were looking for a place to stay, and one of your builders offered up like his house, right, for you to stay there. That blew my mind. I mean, that's so amazing that your customer cares about you and says, while you're looking for a place, come stay with me.
And I don't want to get too deep into it, but it was a really rough time in my life. And it was a dark time. And I had started hanging out with him and his wife and his kids as they were building this house, a big, beautiful house with an unfinished basement. We were all sitting around having some adult beverages, and he said, "Well, you can move into the basement." And and they paid for it and everything, but it was great. It was nice to know
I think it's
that
amazing.
I connected on such a level that this guy was willing to see me every day.
Yeah.
and during a really dark time. I look back on it and go, I don't know if I'd offer up my basement to where I was in that time, but it was great.
Yeah, that's really cool, man.
One thing that I don't know that you've talked about is being challenged, and how do you what do you do for yourself if you're starting to burn out? What are your tools to kind of get you back on track?
Yeah, man. I think that goal setting is a huge one. So when I have goals, I feel like I'm unstoppable. When I don't have goals, I just flounder in chaos and burnout and fatigue. The other is I heard Donald Miller tell a story about an interview that he gave with Pete Carroll one time. And he says that he's interviewing Pete Carroll, and Pete Carroll's such a popular football coach and all the players love him. He's so others centered in his coaching. It's not about him. And Donald asked him, "How did you get that way?" And Pete basically said, "You know what? I was fortunate in life to have a bunch of early success at a young age, and I realized that it doesn't mean anything. And once you've had that level of success, what starts to light you up is helping other people get it." Mm-hmm. And I think that's dead on. I mean, I'm even thinking about this podcast for me has kind of become that of, yeah, we can have this amazing sales process ourselves, and we can make a bunch of money and help customers and lock it up and hold it tight. Mm-hmm. And I can feel totally hollow and empty.
Yeah.
Or we can start to change our focus to share with others who are on the journey. And I think it's going to be symbiotic, because I think as we do that, I'm going to get better. I think that my teams under me are going to get better. But I think that being a blessing to others, it's what I think. So this goes into where I believe like the theology of blessing comes from. Like I believe the theology of blessing is that God has given us blessings in different capacities. And if we hold on to it, dude, it dies. Blessing is meant to be overflowed and poured into other people. And that's where the money is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, and I would tweak what you said a little bit.
Yeah.
And say, I believe that's not where the money is, but that's where the happiness is.
There you go.
That's where you kind of like settle into the pocket, if you will, stick to our sports analogies.
Yeah.
I think I've watched you kind of ground yourself in finding that. So I'm searching for that. I'm really searching for that right now, is to try to figure out where I can share those blessings with.
Yeah.
It's a really nice thing to hear you say that. It kind of puts words in something that I've been feeling but not being able to put words around.
Yeah.
I'm just keep working, keep being positive, and going towards the light.
Yeah. I definitely think it is about finding that North Star. I really do.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that you got to have a North Star that's bigger than your day job, because having a long-term North Star that's pulling you, even when it seems like you're floundering in the day-to-day, having that North Star, you're always headed in that direction. And it's funny looking back. Like when I look back at my life, I can see the path that I took always being pulled by that North Star. But in the moment, I never, ever would have guessed that I was even on the path. I would just be like, no, man, I'm still floundering. I'm still trying to figure it out. But I was actually still heading that direction. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There's a pull that we all end up being pulled in different directions in positive and negative. If you're a negative person and you're always, kicking dirt and this, then your North Star is going to be a little darker direction.
Oh, yeah.
Like that's you're opening yourself up for that. But if you try to cut the darkness out, then life's kind of easier. That's what it comes back to what we were talking about a little bit ago, finding the right customer. Like, what is your goal in sales and what types of fireplaces that you want to sell, and then go and find the customer that buys that type. It requires you to have put yourself in the frame of mind to find that customer.
I think that is so profound. The idea of find your customer, don't push your product. Dude, that is brilliant. We should go out and find the people that need help and then build products to solve those problems. I mean, to be honest, like that's what this podcast has been, is like, I know the 5 people by name that I started this podcast for.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So one question I want to ask you as we wrap up here, circling back to just practical sales. If you've got a new sales rep that is selling to builders and they're just, they're banging their head against a wall, what are you, if they can say, Cory, you sell millions and millions of dollars of stuff every year, I got to talk to you for 15 minutes. I can't do it. I'm burned out. I'm overworked. I can't figure out this builder world. They give you 15 minutes. What are you going to tell them?
I'm going to tell them, let's take tomorrow off. Like literally, I'm going to say, let's just take tomorrow off, and then I'm going to explain it in the frame of mind that they're in right that moment. you might as well take tomorrow off. It all comes down to you buy from friends. That's what you want to be, is that person that brings a different value to it. I won't name him by name, but one of the first year or two that I was here, one of our other salespeople that had been here forever, he was selling the same product that I was. We both bid on the same job. Like, shouldn't even say this out loud. We bid on the same job, and he beat me by like $5,000.
Wow.
Which is quite a big number, like a pretty big percentage. And so the customer came back to us and said the homeowner had gone to him and the customer had gone to me. And he came back to me saying, why is your price $5,000 more? So again, my first move is always get him off the phone. I got to collect myself because I just got called out.
Yeah.
Like whenever I'm called out, backed into a corner, my initial reaction is always to fight.
Sure.
And that you're never going to sell something if you're fighting. So my first response is always to try to respectfully get myself off the phone by telling them that they must, whatever they're noticing must be right, and I must have made a mistake. I need to dig into how that happened. So I got off the phone and I called him and I was like, man, what happened? He goes, Cory, you are charging way too much. And I said, why do you think that? And he said, well, because, this is this, and this is that. And he had a good reason. So he was right. I was also right. And at the end I said, but your value, what are you worth? Like, you're right. That is the right price to get a fireplace with an install. But this is hiring custom. You got 5 or 6 extra trips as a Firespace engineer goes out there. Like, I got to get paid for those times. And so having him recognize that he had value, it was just eye-opening. This is someone that I looked up to big time, but he didn't recognize how much value he brought to the table.
Wow.
We lost that sale, unfortunately, but we learned a lot from it. And I watched his margins go up, 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 all because now he recognized and now he knew how to talk about value. Now, to circle back just to finish the story, I did have to call the builder back and tell him, well, this is why. And I had to break down every trip. So this is my pre-con trip. This is the trip that I come out. I meet with you and your designer so that I can understand your design, so that then I can take that design to our install trip and make sure it goes. But I broke it down to here's why the price was different. Now you can say that I'm
overinflated.
I'm overinflated, that my value is lower than that, and that's okay. That's just a disagreement. But at least I could back it up at that point.
So I want to put you on the spot here. I want to ask you, what's the coolest fireplace you've ever sold?
Oh, by far, it's a Fire Cave by Stellar Hearth.
What is a Fire Cave?
It's a high-rise downtown Seattle, and the top 2 floors are penthouses, and there's a penthouse floor that's all amenities just for the penthouse suites. So one of my residential builder who also owns these commercial buildings, he called me. Him and the architect had this room called the Fire Cave. And there's a pool up there, all these things. But when you're at one end of the room and you look down, the far end, it looks like a phone booth that's about 4 feet off the ground with the door open. And he said, this is a fireplace. So I went to Stellar and said, these guys want a vertical linear, 8 foot tall, 30 inches wide, with a flaming, a flame going straight up the middle of it. And they said, no, you can't do that. Nobody does vertical linear, And I was like, all right. So back to the drawing board. And my partner, Eli, actually found a picture similar, kind of an inspirational photo.
Yeah.
Found this picture. And so we took that picture during a sales meeting that Stellar was out at. And I had this picture in my phone. And the same guy was up in front of the whole sales staff. He goes, we can do anything. Well, I raised my hand. You can see where this is going.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, no, you can't. And he's like, yes, we can do anything. I go, no, you can't do anything. He goes, what do you mean? I go, well, you told me I couldn't do a vertical linear. And that was just enough push that they went back to the drawing board and they figured out a way to do it. And now they've done it multiple times. They've made some, I think they've got one that's 8 foot horizontal that then takes a 90 and goes up the wall.
Yeah.
So it was really cool. So the Fire Cave is, I call it a flaming stripper pole. It's literally no glass. No, you could climb in there and it is so cool. So
we're going to have to post a picture of that in the show notes.
Yeah, I will.
So it's 8 feet high, linear flame. So how's the flame like? Where's the burner?
Spirals. It spirals up a pole. So if you imagine a gas log lighter,
yeah,
it's 8 foot tall, and those holes in it spiral. It's really, really cool fireplace.
That's rad. So here's the last thing I got. I know I keep saying that this is the last question, but I love just talking with you. I heard a rumor that when you got hired at Fireside, you had a pink mohawk and a handlebar mustache.
Yes.
So, for someone like me, I'm always about like, hey, look clean, look professional. You have really opened my eyes to the fact that, you know what, dude, we sell fireplaces. That's kind of weird. Like, it's okay to make a statement. Talk to me about that.
Yeah. So I'll tack another piece onto that. We had to do your elevator pitch, typical, thing. You got to have your elevator pitch. And the beginning of my elevator pitch is always the same. I was fortunate enough that my mom never told me not to play with fire. Like, this would have changed my life. If she would have said, Cory, don't play with fire, what would I be doing today? Like, she never said that. So here I am. But yeah, it's funny. So Fireside has always been the giant in the market I live in. And so I've always bid against him, fought against him. And it was the second time I had actually interviewed with John and Bob Balder. And I actually texted Bob Balder one night when I knew the company that I was presently working for was on their way out. They weren't paying their bills. They weren't, the writing was on the wall. I was like, I got to get out before I burn a builder. And so I texted Bob and said, hey, my feelings are hurt that you haven't tried to get me to come work for you lately. And his only response was, if you're serious, I'll call you in the morning. And I just replied, I'm serious. So I go to this interview in our small, at that time, a small retail showroom in Kent. And I did. It was a yellow and orange. It looked like a flame. Mohawk and a big handlebar mustache. And I came in there and I just remember that Angela, who was the office manager, I remember her and the other ladies in the office looking out the windows and going, who is this guy? And at this point, I knew I was getting hired. John knew he was going to hire me. The numbers, he was just buying the numbers, really, Yep. And then I walked in. He hadn't seen me since I interviewed with him, 2 years earlier, and I got the job. It's just the funnier story than that one is the Tim Rethlick. Every time we hire a new salesperson, Tim would fly out and fight with him. So I'm going to tell it the way Tim tells it. I don't think I was dressed this way, but I'll tell it his way because it's funnier. He tells me to this day, he goes, yeah. So then John Waterstrat tells me that we got this new sales guy, Cory Dupuy. He's coming on board and he's going to be the new Bob Balder of Fireside. It's going to be great. He goes, then this guy shows up with a handlebar mustache, a big mohawk, wearing a wife beater and flip-flops. And he shows up and I got to ride along with this guy. We're riding around the Puget Sound and this guy won't stop talking. All he does is talk. And I'm in the passenger seat thinking, how is this guy ever going to be a salesperson? He doesn't shut up. He goes, then we show up at the first job and we walk inside and Cory talks to this customer and we figured out it was actually an insert and we figured it all out and we get back in the car and start going. And Tim looks at me and goes, wow, how long have you known that guy? And I said, I have never met him before. We have only spoken on the phone a couple of times. And he goes, really? And he just walked right in and listened. He goes, you changed. You totally changed. You talk too much when we're driving around, but you listen perfectly when you're in front of a customer. And I was like, Tim, here's the deal, man. I know what your job is. Your job is to give information back to John Waterstrat about me. My job is to throw as much bull on the table that you're going to only remember the good stuff, I'm hoping. So you can tell John.
Dude, that is awesome.
That's the story.
That's awesome. Well, Cory, I think that we're going to wrap it up. I got to say, I appreciate, number one, just the friendship, having somebody like you in my corner that I can bounce stuff off of, and just the inspiration of seeing someone. I truly believe when it comes to active salespeople in the field right now, there is no one better in this continent than you. I'm 100% sure that is. I think it's just awesome to call you a friend and be able to pick your brain for just some nuggets here.
Oh, thanks, Tim. I really appreciate that. And right back at you, what you've done for all of us in talking about this sales approach and talking about processes and really kind of trying to come up with some vocabulary around what a lot of us have been taught or do naturally. It is you're doing a great thing for the industry, and we appreciate you.
Thanks, man. Well, I appreciate that. Thanks for coming on board today.
You're welcome, man. Have a great day.
All right, man. See ya. Well, I hope you guys got some serious value out of that conversation. I thought it was just awesome to get some insight into one of the brightest minds of our industry. Seriously, when it comes to high-end custom sales, there is no one better than Cory Dupuy, and I just love getting the chance to pick his brain and talk to him. One of the things that we really hit on that I think is super, super important is that idea of what is success for? Because at the end of the day, if success is only about you, it's not that fulfilling. I think it was really important how he touched on the idea that the beauty of success and blessing is that it can be poured into others so that they can win as well. And that is something to take to the bank. So with one episode left in season 2, I hope that's one thing that you guys are thinking on for the next few months. Just so you guys know, next week's episode, to wrap things up, is going to be the Q&A episode. And I've got all kinds of questions from people all over North America who have been writing in, asking things for me to tackle. And so we're going to dive in next week to answer your questions. After that, we're going to take a break for a few months. And the plan is that season 3 is going to kick off just after Labor Day in September. Now, there's going to be a couple bonus episodes in between now and then. There's a couple really fun things that I've been cooking on, and I'm going to just throw those out randomly over the next couple months. But season 3 is going to be so focused, and I just can't wait for you guys to hear it. What we're going to do is in the first 7 episodes of season 3, we're going to tackle the 7 steps of my sales process. And those are really, really simple, but they make life easy for a customer and simple for your team to sell. So I'm really excited to jump into that. Now, I'm teasing you guys, but there is going to be a huge announcement in season 3 that I cannot wait to tell you guys about. This is something that I've been cooking on for a little while, and I think it's going to be big. What I will say is that if the content from this podcast has been helping your business grow, and if you've been enjoying the community that's been created, just wait. I cannot wait to share this with you. So with all of that said, I hope you guys go out and be a blessing this week, and I can't wait to circle back and wrap things up next week with the Q&A episode. We'll see you then.
Thank you for listening to the Firetime Podcast. To learn more, visit the website itsfiretime.com. Music from this episode was written and recorded by In Bloom out of Portland, Oregon. We thank you for listening to the Firetime Podcast, where it's never hot enough, slow is fast, and the way to win is to make it so stupidly easy to buy from you that there's no excuse not to. We'll see you next time.
All in to burn.